Hey everybody, welcome back Public's Eye Outdoors. We're back inside. We're going to do a video that I think some people will find interesting, some may not. Anyway, I was talking to a gentleman at work the other day, and he was thinking about getting into muzzleloading. Now this gentleman is really big into firearms, has multiple firearms, and knows his stuff about calibers and anything about guns. This guy can tell you right off the top of his head. He is a fanatic when it comes to firearms. But he was asking me, it's December, so muzzleloader started up, and I've been going out but haven't had a lot of time, and just haven't had any success. So I'm just going to put this video together. But the reason I wanted to put this video together was because he was asking me questions. Hey, I'm thinking about doing this because I kind of like to get a longer season in, and what would you suggest? And for the most part, it was cut and dry for me. But after I got looking into the different modern ones, the ones of today, I started to realize that it can be pretty confusing. It can also be as simple as you want to make it, but he's one that wants the best and the most accurate firearm that he can produce. So I knew that he was going to go in that rabbit hole. So I was looking at different ones of today to give him suggestions on which way to kind of steer him. And man, I'll tell you what, looking at some of these new ones on the market, you can go down some major rabbit holes with these things. They're basically like just a regular rifle, and you can get some of those to hit 300 plus yards. So we're not going to get that deep into it. I'm going to leave it up to the consumers and you guys to kind of decide which way you want to go. But I would recommend that you do your due diligence to do your background work on what loads, what powders, because it can be pretty confusing and you could get in some issues if you do not do that. So let's just jump into it. As you can see behind me, I've got 5 here with me. So we've got a flintlock, and then we've got 2 cap, and basically the rest of these are a cap oriented firing system. But there's different caps, and we're going to get into all that. So as I'm explaining all of these, I'll kind of show you and go over afterwards the different loads and what the major differences are. So I'll start with the oldest one here, and I have another one, but it's with my dad. He had to take it to a gunsmith because I was an idiot, and it had a cone on the the ramrod. I just thought I was going to put a patch on there, shove it down there, and clean that barrel out. Well, when I put that patch around it, it seized up at the bottom, and I couldn't get that cone back out. So he's going to have to take it to a gunsmith and have that taken out. But that's kind of the reason why I wanted to do this video, is because, little things like that could cause you a lot of issues if you're not in the know of what you're doing with them. So anyway, this is basically a musket shotgun, double barrel shotgun. And this thing weighs about 20 pounds. It's a tank. It's ridiculous. I couldn't imagine shooting this thing. I can hardly hold it. It's so heavy. But you have your musket, which is basically the oldest representation of black powder out there. Besides a matchstick, they actually have them with a matchstick that struck and lit and then fired. Or you lit them if prior. I don't know. I've never shot one, never seen one, to be honest with you. So I do know they exist, but it's basically the same as a flintlock. So on your flintlocks, you would have a piece of flint, you know. And then you have your striker plate. You'd have your flint locked in here. You'd have powder that you would put down in here. You roll that forward, and you're ready to shoot. And once that strikes that plate, it produces a big spark, hits your powder, goes into a port on the side, lights the powder inside, and everything goes out the other end. So that's your oldest model of black powder that you could probably find. Staying on the traditional line, and I consider these two both traditional, would be your cap. Now, this one was built by my father. This one here is a Mendy. I don't know what company that is, but anyway, he built this on his own. This will take number 11 precision or cap, and these were basically the next generation of muzzleloader with the cap. So there was pistol. There's several different caps, but for this particular gun, it takes the number 11 cap, and I'll show you some of these here. But this one was built by my dad. This is in a 45 caliber. That's the other thing that you're going to deal with trying to get into muzzleloading is what caliber. There's two what I would call standard calibers when it comes to muzzleloading. That'd be your 50 caliber and your 45 caliber. 45 calibers are not as popular as the 50. 50 you can pretty much find everywhere. And then there's also like the 58. There's some bigger ones even than that. So just depending on how you want to approach your muzzleloading journey, there are different calibers out there. But 50 and 45 are going to be your most common. Like I said, that one is in 45. This one here is another one that my father had. He purchased this one from a gentleman. And this gun is absolutely gorgeous. I love this gun. It's got the beadwork on it. It's a double set trigger. So you push the back one and it's ready to fire. And this trigger here is probably less than 1 pound. I mean, it is absolutely, I just stick my finger through here and it goes off. I mean, it's ridiculous. It's scary, to be honest with you. I have shot this gun and it's kind of scary because you barely touch that trigger and it's going. But that's a 50 caliber, and it's a beautiful gun. It's got the octagon barrel on it, just a perfect size for a smaller statured person, you know. But that would be another traditional in a 50 caliber. Shorter barrel on it. So then we move up to the modern day, what I consider modern day, starting back in the 80s, I believe, where they started coming out with these different inlines. And the first one that I ever purchased was this one here. This is a CBA, I believe, in a 50 caliber. It's an inline bolt action, so everything's going straight through. You've got your breech plug that's inside here. And the reason that I don't really care for this one, especially now that I have a scope on it, is because you have to have two different tools to get into this thing to take the breech plug out. So you have your nipple, and then you have your breech plug. First you have to extract the nipple out of here with a little tool, and you can just take little short turns. It's tedious. And then you got a big rod that you stick in there and unscrew the breech plug. So it's not as efficient as the modern ones today, but you know, that's what I consider a inline. I mean, everything's inline. There's no break. But the next one I'm going to show you is also an inline, considered an inline. This is my newest one. This one here is a Traditions. This does have the brake. You can see it breaks there. Very simple to unscrew that breech plug and clean it, which saves you a ton of time instead of having to take out 2 or 3 different tools to get it out. So there's your brake, and just a nice just a nice gun. I really like shooting this gun, to be honest with you. Came with its own scope. That's the other thing you're going to find in these modern, you can go with a scope, add your own scope. Scopes are really not going to matter on these, to be honest. You could put a red dot on these if you needed to. Just how simple, however simple you want to make it is where you can go with these things. And a lot of states make it mandatory that you stay on the traditional line, no scopes. Some of them don't even want you to have a hidden firing system. It's got to be open. So a lot of manufacturers were trying to keep it that traditional, so you could use it anywhere. There was some disc. There was some old disc ones where you had a. Now, if I remember right, I've never bought one. I never really dealt with them, but if I remember right, I think there was a little disc that went into a little compartment and it had a door on it. So everything was hidden. It's basically to keep that primer from keep that primer waterproof and element proof. But you don't really see those on the market much anymore. That is another one that you could find. Now, when we go into the different loading and processes of these guns, you go clear back to your traditionals, which would take basically a lead ball and a patch. So the patch, you know, today you have your modern day sabots. We'll get into those here. But with a ball, you have to have a patch to go around it. There's different kinds of patches. There's cloth patches. There's some guys would use canvas. I don't know if burlap was ever used, but if you had the right diameter, if anything to wrap that thing up and get it to keep that from sitting directly on the powder and stuff, and give you that diameter that you need for that particular load. So it was pretty cut and dry, just a ball with a patch. So basically this isn't really a patch, but I'll just kind of give you an idea of what I'm talking about here. So say this was your round patch. You would put the ball inside that round patch and everything would go down into the barrel. So that's basically the process, and then you would have a cap. So the old caps, here we have a number 11 cap. This is for the rifles. There's actually a smaller one than this, a number 10, which was used for the pistols. So if you can imagine, I can barely hold this thing. It's pretty small. Not very reliant, to be honest with you. If they got any kind of moisture on them, they were just nil void. But the pistol ones were even smaller, and we do have a black powder pistol, a Navy pistol, but I don't have that here with me. The other cap that you might see, and this one here actually uses this cap. This one will take a musket cap. Now some guys call all these musket caps, but I call this a musket cap. It's a bigger cap, and they started using these in the more traditional, or the newer inlines at first. It's a lot bigger cap. It's basically the size of a shotgun primer cap, but it's just it's a lot like the number 11, but just in a bigger size. So you can handle these, but with gloves, it's still kind of a pain in the butt. So that was the 3 different caps that you utilized on these muzzle loaders. So this one here would take a 209 primer, and that's basically a shotgun primer. So here we have some 777 shotgun primers. Actually, these are muzzleloader primer. And that's the other thing, you know, when I talk about things being a little bit confusing as far as load sizes, you can also get into a rabbit hole with these caps and stuff. There's different powder charges in these caps. So some of these, you know, like your traditional shotgun primers will probably burn a little bit hotter. and depending on how you load your muzzle loader, could be an issue. So these are made for muzzle loaders. I would suggest you get something that's recommended by your manufacturer and stick with that, because there is differences in hotness in some of these caps. But that would be a cap for the modern day inlines. There's different ways. You would also use loose powder when it came to your traditionals. You basically just measure out your load, pour it down the barrel, and then put your ball and patch on top of that. Now, when it comes to propellants, your powder, basically there's a couple different ways that you can do it, even with these new inlines and the newest ones out there. A lot of guys are starting to go back to the loose powder and getting a lot better results. But they have come out with, and these have been out for a long time, even when I bought that first one. And basically they're pellets, okay? So you've got these pellets that are pre-measured, and they'll have a dark side and a light side. The dark side will go down. That's kind of a hotter part of the pellet, and that would go down towards the where the flame comes through. But these pellets will have a hole down the center of them. Okay, so if you have too hot of a primer, you could push that bullet out away from that before it even ignites, so you get that kind of a misfire. You get space, air pocket in there, and then you get that double hit. You got to do your due diligence in figuring out what the manufacturer wants you to use and things like that. You can go and do things on your own, buy different things, but make sure that you're aware of the different situations that you could get yourself into. As far as loads, man, there are a plethora of different loads that you can get for these guns nowadays. The two most common are going to be a belted and what we call a sabot. And basically these sabots, you know how I said with the ball you had to put the patch around it to make that diameter correct on those bullets to get that to fit tightly. Well, basically these sabots are doing the same thing for you. So your bullet here is, I believe, almost like a .45 caliber size bullet. Okay, but once you put this plastic or polymer sabot around it, that's going to give you your .50 caliber dimension to make that, and then this bullet will expand as it goes out the barrel. There are some of them that, like these belted, that are made for the .50 caliber and size right to .50 caliber dimensions. So you don't need the sabot. What they have, and the ones I use, are the power belt. Some guys like these, some guys don't like them. It's just preference. For the longest time I kind of steered away from these because I was always having problems getting them to be accurate, but you know, I think that was due to my not having the knowledge that I needed when I was just starting in. And but anyway, they have a plastic cap on the bottom of these bullets, and they have a little nipple, and they fit right on there, which makes a seal. When you feed this down into the barrel, everything's the same dimension. So once that powder ignites, it's like a shotgun wad. It basically kicks this bullet out without that belt on it, and then the belt will come flying out just like the sabots. So a very, very nice bullet, very innovative. And I know that Hornaday's come out with one that I need to check out. and I don't know the name of that one right offhand, but it is it's a belted bullet just like the power belts. So that's basically your new inline setups is going to be your primer. Either you need to go with pellets or powder. Now the powder is going to be more consistent, but you need to do your due diligence again to figure out how to load these or to measure these out. A lot of guys will do it by weight. Okay, a lot of times you can buy from the manufacturer's tubes that have the markings. Okay, but the problem with that with volume measurements is it settles. So if you have 2 of those tubes and you put the same amount of powder in there, you know, if this one gets tamped or whatever, you're going to have a difference in size. Your measurements are not going to be consistent. So doing this by weight is the best way to do that. So I've never really messed with the powder, the granule powders. And there again, there are so many of these on the market. This happens to be a 777 powder, and there's all kinds of different powders that you can get. The newest one and the most liked powder out there right now is called Blackhorn. But this stuff is very expensive. But I'll tell you what, from what I've heard, you can get very, very tight ballistics with that powder. It burns a ton cleaner. You can get off, I've heard guys say 20-25 shots without even cleaning your barrel and still be able to feed that bullet in there with no problem. So that's something that I'm probably going to look into in the future. But anyway, this 777 is quite a bit more granule than what that Blackhorn will be. So there's all kinds of different powders, all kinds of different bullets. I'm not even going to get into all that. You're going to have to kind of use your discretion on that, how you want to go about that. Do your background checks on all that stuff. There's some guys that make their own bullets and size their own bullets, and it can get complicated just like a regular rifle if you want to go that direction. The next thing I would talk to you about is cleaning and prepping your muzzle loader. It is a process and one that needs to be taken. If you do not clean these powders out of that barrel, you will not have a barrel the next year. It will be corroded, pitted, basically inoperable. I had a friend that stuck his under his bed, you know, after he got done using it one year and didn't clean it. It took us probably 2 hours to get everything out of that barrel, and even after we got it all out, you could look down that barrel and it was just absolutely pitted. I mean, it just had pits everywhere in that barrel. It was basically useless at that point. So maintaining and cleaning your barrels is absolutely critical. There's a lot of different cleaners out there. Now, one of the things I'll tell you on your traditionals, if you have raw steel, I would steer clear of a lot of these cleaners. They are corrosive, and they will do damage to that raw metal. So a lot of guys will just use soap and water, like dish soap and water, to clean their barrel. And then you would use something like a beeswax, or this is boar butter. This is just basically like a cream, or a cream that has wax in it. So it's basically like a deterrent to rust, moisture, things like that. So I still to this day will put boar butter in all my barrels, just that added protection. So, you know, there's 2 different ways that you need to approach these guns depending on what you have. If you have a raw steel barrel, you need to approach that differently than the night tight finishes on these barrels nowadays. These will put up with a lot more of the corrosiveness than the older barrels will. So there's different cleaners out there. You've got seasoning patches. I use these seasoning patches on mine. They're made from Traditions. I run those down there, and that basically seasons that barrel and keeps it from rusting and deteriorating. You'll need patches, cleaning patches. You'll put whatever cleaner you want on these. This one here is a bore cleaner, and it's a foam. So I just basically shoot just a shot down in that barrel and let it run down the barrel. And then I'll go back in and clean all that out with a patch, 3 or 4 patches, and then dry patch. And then I'll go back with the seasoning and run that seasoner through that barrel. Now I have a bore snake here. I use a bore snake on my inline that breaks. I just basically feed this through the backside and then just run it out the front. So there's all kinds of different ways to clean these barrels. So there's a lot to it, but you can make it as simple as you want, and the simpler the better. If you're one of those guys that like to be very particular and anal about how you do things, then you can get carried away and go down a rabbit hole with this black powder stuff. So it's just however you want to approach it. I just wanted to make a video here kind of showing some of the different changes in the different lines of muzzle loading. Yeah, I just wanted to put a quick video together here and kind of go through all this with you, and hopefully if you're thinking about getting muzzle loading, you can make it a fun season for you. It opens up that hunting season for you. And honestly, a lot of the times I've seen some of my biggest deer during that December period. I've said many times in the past that the biggest deer usually come out and play in that December time, because if they're old and smart, a lot of times during rifle seasons, if your rifle season comes before your muzzleloader, some states have their muzzleloader way before rifle. So there again, that's another good opportunity to get out there and get ahead of the rifle season. But around here, our muzzleloading season comes after rifle. I really enjoy it because there's not a lot of people out there. And like I said, a lot of them big deer will just kick back and not even be around during that November period, especially now with the weather being like it is. It's been so warm every year. They really like that cold a lot more, so they can get out and run around. But yeah, it just opens up another season for you. So anyway, if you got any questions, you can leave them in the comments. I'm not the guy when it comes to muzzleloading, but I do have some pretty good knowledge on them. And just find what works for you. If you want to stay that traditional route where you've got the old style and you want to go that direction, that's great. You want that challenge, and those will challenge you. Some states you have to. Some states will not allow scopes or hidden breech plugs, or so check your regulations in your state and make sure that I know for a fact Colorado, for one, does not allow scopes. You have to have open sights, and I believe there's some states that even will not allow you to have a closed breech plug, so it has to be open a firing system. So check your regulations, make sure that are aware of those before you go out, and just have fun with it. You can get as modern with it as you want, or as primitive as you want. Just depends on what road you want to go down. So anyway, thanks for watching Public's Eye Outdoors. Until next time, stay safe out there in your hunts, everybody. We'll see you on the next video.